In 1877, Japan's 1,000-year samurai legacy was facing its final breath. On one side, 30,000 modern imperial troops with heavy artillery, and on the other, just 400 warriors, walking willingly into total extinction. This wasn't just a battle, it was the bloody collision of the ancient world against the modern machine. And before their final choice changed history forever. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and leave a like to join us for more legendary stories. Now, let's dive into the bloodbath.
For over 8 centuries, the samurai were not just warriors. They were the absolute spine of Japan. Bound by Bushido, an unwritten code of absolute loyalty, honor, and mastery of the blade, they walked through society as living gods. To insult a samurai meant instant death. Their swords, the katana, were believed to carry their very souls. But by the mid-19th century, the world outside Japan was changing at a terrifying speed. Western powers were conquering continents with steamships, rifles, and ironclad warships. Japan realized a painful truth: remain isolated and be conquered, or modernize and survive. In 1868, the Meiji Restoration swept through the nation. The emperor was restored to power and a massive wave of westernization began. Railroads replaced dirt paths. Telegraph wires spanned across mountains. And for the samurai, their world began to shatter. First, the government banned the carrying of katanas in public, a direct humiliation to every warrior. Next, their legal privileges were stripped away. Finally, the empire established a modern national army based on Western conscription. Peasants who had spent centuries bowing in terror to the samurai were suddenly handed modern rifles and told they were equals. The ancient warrior class was being systematically deleted from history. Among the leaders of the new government was a man named Saigo Takamori. He was a legendary figure, physically imposing, deeply respected, and one of the key architects who helped restore the emperor to power. Saigo understood that Japan needed to modernize, but he could not stomach the total destruction of samurai honor and culture. When the government severed the stipends of former warriors, hundreds of thousands of samurai were left bankrupt, starving, and stripped of their identity. Tensions boiled over in the southern province of Satsuma, Saigo's homeland. Satsuma was a stronghold of traditionalists, home to young warriors who had trained their entire lives for battle, only to be told their skills were obsolete. In 1877, young samurai raided Imperial armories in Kagoshima. Saigo Takamori faced an impossible choice: betray his loyal followers, or stand with them against the very government he had helped create. Saigo chose honor. He stepped forward to lead what would become known as the Satsuma Rebellion. Over 30,000 rebellious samurai joined his cause. Saigo marched northward, not with the intention of overthrowing the emperor, but to rid the imperial government of corrupt, westernized bureaucrats who were destroying Japan's soul. The imperial government responded with overwhelming force. They deployed the newly formed Imperial Japanese Army, an armada of over 60,000 conscripted soldiers armed with state-of-the-art French and German rifles, field artillery, and dangerous multi-barrel Gatling guns. On paper, the peasant army should have easily crushed the rebels. But on the battlefield, the samurai were pure nightmare incarnate. At the siege of Kumamoto Castle, the imperial troops learned the terrifying reality of close-quarters combat against samurai. When ammunition ran low, Saigo's warriors drew their katanas and charged into enemy trenches. The conscript soldiers, terrified by the ruthless ferocity of the warriors, panicked and broke ranks. For months, the bloody conflict raged across the rugged mountains of Kyushu. The samurai fought with desperate bravery, but courage could not defy mathematics. Modern warfare was an industrial machine of attrition. For every imperial soldier killed, 3 more took his place. The Imperial Army had an endless supply of ammunition, artillery shells, and reinforcements arriving by steamships. The samurai, cut off from supplies, were slowly bled dry. Month after month, their numbers dwindled from 30,000 to 10,000 to a few hundred. By September 1877, the rebellion was all but over. Saigo Takamori and his remaining survivors, a mere 400 samurai, retreated to the sacred mountain of Shiroyama, overlooking the city of Kagoshima. Encircling the mountain was an Imperial Army of 30,000 soldiers, fully equipped with heavy artillery, mortars, and Gatling guns. The ratio was 75 to 1. The Imperial commander General Yamagata sent a respectful letter to Saigo, begging his old friend to surrender and avoid a meaningless death. Saigo quietly refused. For the samurai on Shiroyama, surrender was an unthinkable disgrace. They spent their final night reminiscing, playing music and preparing their minds for death. They had no bullets left, no cannon shells, and very little food. They had only their armor and their katanas. On September 24th at 3:50 a.m., the quiet night sky erupted into hellfire. Imperial artillery unleashed a devastating bombardment, firing over 7,000 shells into the tiny mountain ridge. The earth shook, trees collapsed, and fire rained down on the remaining warriors. Around 6 a.m., the artillery fell silent. Through the thick haze of gunpowder smoke, the Imperial infantry began their final ascent up Shiroyama. Then, the unbelievable happened. Out of the smoke, drawing their katana swords, the remaining 400 battered, bleeding samurai charged downhill into a wall of rifle fire. The sight struck terror into the hearts of the Imperial conscripts. In hand-to-hand combat, a samurai with a sword was an unstoppable force. The rebels cut through the front lines of the Imperial Army, desperate to sell their lives as dearly as possible. During the chaos, Saigo Takamori was struck in the abdomen and thigh by rifle bullets. Knowing his end had come, he turned to his most loyal follower, Beppu Shinsuke, and requested his final service. Saigo knelt on the bloody earth, faced toward the Imperial Palace in Tokyo, and performed seppuku, the sacred ritual suicide. With a single swift strike of his sword, Beppu ended his master's suffering to preserve his ultimate honor. Driven by intense grief and rage, the final handful of surviving samurai threw themselves into the dense ranks of the enemy until every single one was cut down. By 7 a.m., the Battle of Shiroyama was over. Silence fell over the mountain. The 1,000-year reign of the samurai had officially died. Yet, something extraordinary followed. The Imperial soldiers, looking down at the fallen warriors, didn't celebrate. Instead, they removed their caps and bowed in solemn respect to Saigo Takamori and his men. Though they fell to modern guns, the spirit of the samurai became immortal. Today, Saigo Takamori is remembered not as a traitor, but as the last samurai, a titan who refused to let honor be erased by the march of time.